Okay, picture this. You're locked up in the absolute most secure, terrifying fortress in American history, a place so isolated that the wardens actually bragged about it being 100% inescapable. Well, in this explainer, we're diving straight into the mystery that completely shattered that illusion. We're talking about the Alcatraz Escape, a case that has literally baffled experts and law enforcement for over 60 years.
Flashback to a pitch-black night in June 1962. 3 inmates vanish. Just poof, gone without a trace into the freezing, unforgiving dark. I mean, it sounds like a literal Hollywood heist movie, right? But this was entirely real. So as we sift through the evidence today, I want you to keep this one massive question in the back of your head. Did these guys just meet a tragic end in the icy waters of the bay? Or did they actually pull off the greatest prison escape in American history? Let's get into it.
To really get the vibe of this place, you've got to think about the sheer psychological torture of this number, 2 kilometers. Long before it was the massive tourist trap it is today, Alcatraz was America's most feared federal penitentiary. And the crazy thing? It was sitting just 2 kilometers off the coast of a bustling, vibrant San Francisco. On New Year's Eve, inmates could actually hear the parties echoing right across the water. But because of the brutal environment surrounding it, it might as well have been on the moon. It was an island fortress standing totally alone.
Now, prison officials didn't just casually hope Alcatraz was secure. They practically guaranteed no one was ever getting out alive. And you can see why. First off, you've got the freezing cold water of the bay, which will put a human body into shock in minutes. Then you factor in these incredibly powerful, totally unpredictable ocean currents that will literally sweep you straight out to the Pacific. Add constant heavy guard surveillance, and the fact that they were housing the absolute worst of the worst, guys like Al Capone, and yeah, the authorities were incredibly confident.
But you know that total confidence was about to hit a brick wall, and his name was Frank Morris. Morris wasn't just your run-of-the-mill prisoner. The guy was exceptionally smart, boasting a reportedly above-average IQ, and crucially, he already had quite the resume. He'd successfully busted out of multiple other prisons before they finally sent him to the Rock in 1960 just to stop him from running. Once he got there, he teamed up with 2 brothers, John and Clarence Anglin, and together, this brilliant, resourceful trio quietly started scheming the absolute impossible.
The actual physical mechanics of this operation, absolutely wild. It's like a giant puzzle they solved piece by piece over months. Step 1. Working in total secrecy. Every single night, they chipped away at the concrete around the tiny air vents in the back of their cells. Their tools? Stolen cafeteria spoons, some makeshift scrap, and get this, a motorized drill they literally MacGyvered together from a stolen vacuum cleaner motor. No way, right? Step 2, to hide this agonizingly slow progress from the guards, they built fake walls out of painted cardboard. The guards walked by every morning, completely clueless. And finally, step 3. Once they busted through the vents, they snuck into a dead space utility corridor behind the cells and basically set up a hidden underground workshop.
But of course, they needed time. They needed the guards to think they were fast asleep in their beds while they were actually working in that corridor. So they pulled off one of the creepiest, most creative deceptions in criminal history. They swept up real human hair from the prison barbershop and mixed it with soap, toilet paper, cement dust, and paint to sculpt these terrifyingly lifelike dummy heads. Every night, they'd tuck these heads into their beds. When the guards did their nighttime bed checks in the dark, they just saw what looked like peacefully sleeping prisoners. Honestly, it's brilliant.
Okay, so getting out of the cell is one thing, but you're still surrounded by a freezing ocean. Well, the ingenuity just keeps going. Up in that secret corridor workshop, they managed to hoard over 50 standard-issue prison raincoats. Working in absolute silence, they painstakingly stitched and glued these raincoats together to engineer a fully functional, inflatable raft, plus some makeshift life jackets. They even used the heat from the prison's steam pipes to vulcanize the seams so they wouldn't leak. They essentially turned everyday stolen clothes into a full-blown maritime survival kit.
It all comes down to the evening of June 11, 1962. It's go time. One by one, Morris and the Anglin brothers squeeze through those tiny, carved-out holes in their cells. Deep in the night, they scale the plumbing pipes up several levels until they breach the prison roof. From there, cloaked in pitch darkness, they shimmy down a massive ventilation shaft to the rocky shore below. Late that night, they inflate their makeshift raincoat raft, push out into the treacherous freezing bay, and just vanish. Now, quick side note, there's actually a 4th guy involved, but his vent grate got stuck. By the time he got it off, the others were gone, and he was left behind in his cell.
Now put yourself in the shoes of a guard the very next morning. The sun comes up and a few inmates just aren't waking up for the morning head count.
Finally, an officer reaches through the bars, shoves one of the sleeping heads, and it literally snaps off and rolls onto the cold concrete floor. I mean, the panic must have been instant. The prison throws every single alarm, total lockdown. And for the next few days, this massive, unprecedented manhunt explodes across the bay. We're talking swarms of boats, helicopters, local PD, and the Coast Guard.
But here is where this explainer goes from a heist story to a full-blown unsolved mystery. Because despite this massive dragnet, the evidence they actually found was practically nothing. Search teams fished out shredded pieces of the raincoat raft floating in the water. They found a crude wooden paddle. And they recovered a waterproof plastic bag with some personal photos belonging to the Anglin brothers. But the one thing they desperately needed to find? Nothing. 0 bodies were ever recovered. Not a single trace of Frank Morris or the Anglins.
So, did they make it? Let's look at both sides. On one hand, a lot of experts will tell you there's just no way. The brutal combination of that freezing water and the massive, sweeping currents would have made surviving a swim or a sinking raft practically impossible. They likely died out there. But, on the other hand, the Anglin brothers grew up swimming in freezing rivers. They were incredibly tough outdoorsmen. And over the years, their family claimed they received these weird, unsigned postcards and even flowers on birthdays that they swear came from the brothers. Plus, in 2013, authorities actually got a letter supposedly written by an elderly John Anglin asking for medical help for cancer in exchange for a short prison stint. The FBI ran it for DNA imprints, but the results came back completely inconclusive. Wild, right?
Even the official government response is totally split on this. The FBI threw massive resources at the case for 17 straight years, but eventually finding no concrete proof of life, they shut their investigation down in 1979, officially concluding the men drowned. The U.S. Marshals, though, they firmly disagree. They scooped up the case and they absolutely refused to close it. To this very day, the Marshals consider Morris and the Anglins to be active, wanted fugitives. They've stated they'll keep those warrants active until they can definitively confirm their deaths or until the men hit 99 years old. And yes, they are literally still getting tips about them today.
The ripple effect of this whole thing is monumental, and it really comes to a head in 1963. Ironically, barely a year after this incredibly embarrassing security breach, Alcatraz permanently shut its doors. High costs and crumbling concrete finally did it in. But the sheer mythos of that 1962 escape cemented the island in American history forever. It spawned massive best-selling books, gripping documentaries, and of course that iconic Clint Eastwood movie. Today, millions of people ride the ferry across that exact same freezing water just to stand in those very cells and stare at the air vents where it all started.
So, having walked through all of it, the genius planning, the creepy dummy heads, the raincoat raft, and the wildly conflicting clues, I want to put you in the jury box. What is your final verdict? Do you think the freezing, turbulent currents of San Francisco Bay swallowed them up that night? Or do you actually buy that they achieved the impossible, slipped onto the mainland, and lived out their lives as totally different people? We might genuinely never know the absolute truth, and that is exactly why this remains America's greatest unsolved mystery. If you enjoyed this explainer, let us know your theories. Thanks for hanging out, and keep questioning the